Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Greg doesn't get a summer vacation, but I do because the Titans are
Are they done now, Buck? Are they done?
They are. So, the new coach, everything starts a little early when you have a new coach in the NFL. They allow teams to have additional weeks of the offseason program. And so because we got an early start, I think around April 8th was their first day of practice. They are one of the few teams who have already started the NFL's 6-week hiatus, though the rookies will still be hanging around next week and continuing to work with the coaching staff. So I'm looking forward.
So they're still around. Okay, so the staff will still be around.
Yeah, well, you have a hard time, as I know you well know, you have a hard time getting the football coaches out of the football building.
Believe me, I know that. I've been, these guys, that's what a lot of fans don't necessarily understand is these guys think about this stuff 24/7. Even when they're on vacation, they're thinking about it.
Yeah, when Rand Carthon makes a side note about waking up at 2 a.m. thinking about tackle depth and stuff like that, that's not necessarily a joke.
Well, it's funny. I do that during the season. I'm exactly like that myself. I mean, I feel like I'm constantly thinking about what I saw, what I might have missed, how I want to do a segment for my matchup show. I mean, it's never ending. I mean, I almost feel like I'm a coach, just because that's the way I think about it.
Sure. Well, much less you're not quite a one-man staff, but
no, not on the matchup show, but still, when you're, it's funny. I obviously created the show and produced it for years and years and years until I became on air 7 years ago. And, once you're on air, it's a whole different animal because the words are coming out of your mouth. The plays you pick are your plays. How you decide to break them down is your work. It's not, when I sat in the producer's chair and Ron Jaworski and Merrill Hodge did their segments, maybe it wouldn't be the play I would pick, but you know what? I wasn't the one doing it. They were. I just had to make sure that we had a really seamless, good show. And even though I was still watching tons of tape and doing my own thing, but when it's coming out of your mouth, it's a whole different animal.
Certainly that is the case for the team that we are getting ready to discuss because the Dolphins fans are passionate, and we head
a little bit. I've noticed that
they do get a little hot and bothered from time to time, and it's not just the weather down there on South Beach. But we're going to take a look at a bunch of different teams this offseason since it is now, at least for the Titans, officially the offseason, and there's a lot of interesting teams to discuss. Now, not just because Miami's on Tennessee's schedule are they worth taking a look at, but the scheme and the talent and the way those two things marry are one of the more interesting storylines, I think, in the NFL, beyond just the way that the matchups play themselves out on their schedule. So I want to start first, Greg, with Mike McDaniel and how you've seen him take what they were running in San Francisco, implement it in Miami, and then evolve it throughout the course of his brief to date, but pretty successful tenure there as they look to make more strides in the postseason this time around.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating offense. It's so timing and rhythmic based in the pass game, which of course comes from the 49ers as well. They're very, very similar. They'd be sort of the father of it, and Mike was there for years. If I had to describe their offense in a Cliff Notes way, I'd say that their run game is focused on the perimeter and their pass game is focused between the numbers. That would be sort of the Cliff Notes version of what their offense looks like. But the pass game obviously is really, really fascinating. And it's, obviously it's you need a certain kind of quarterback that can really play rhythmically at a high level. I actually heard Dan Orlovsky speaking about the number of quarterbacks that could run that kind of offense. And, it's not necessarily all the quarterbacks that you think are the best quarterbacks in the league because, certain quarterbacks play a certain way and they can be great quarterbacks. But, there is always a correlation between scheme and talent at the quarterback position because most quarterbacks are not transcendent. I mean, Mahomes can do anything because he's Mahomes. But, someone like Josh Allen, who's very gifted physically, he probably would not play in this offense at a really high level. He's not that kind of quick rhythm, timing and rhythm-based player, even though he can do other things really, really well that someone like Tua can't do. But this offense is really built on timing and rhythm. And you watch Tua, And he has limitations as a thrower, by the way. He does not have a big arm. And one thing I will say before I just get into a little more about the nature of the pass game, people have to understand that a fade ball, which by the way, too, is a really good fade ball thrower, that's not an arm strength throw. See, people automatically assume that he's a great deep ball thrower because of fade balls. Fade balls are timing spot throws. They're not big arm throws. So he's a great fade ball thrower. But just to talk about him more generally, he's as good a window thrower as there is in the NFL. And by window thrower, I mean throwing against zone coverage between the numbers. Windows, there's areas, there's voids between and behind. And he is as good as there is at that. He has a great innate feel for underneath coverage and the timing of throws between and behind that coverage. And there's so many examples of that when you watch their tape. Last week, Buck, I watched all of his 20-plus yard completions and all of his third down 6 to 10 yards. That was a lot of plays. And what he is and what he isn't really stands out.
Well, and I always appreciate the perspective and the analysis, specifically when it comes to players like Tua. Not saying that there's a bunch of players like Tua running around in the league. There's obviously a first round draft pick, but where the discourse starts, at least among the casual NFL fan or the casual NFL pundit, is it the player or is it the scheme? And where in reality, the answer is how those two things marry together, how you maximize the strengths of the players that you have. For example, you're talking about a fade ball, the level of success and how good Tua is specifically is that, where others might look at that as saying Tua's really good with the deep ball based on how they're looking at that specific of throw versus how the coaching staff is studying, analyzing, seeing how Tua responds in certain situations where they're experimenting in practice and asking him to take chances and then implementing that throughout the course of the week in the game plan and when competition finally starts in early September. For Tua, though, Greg, I think when you talk about window throws, I wonder how easy or how difficult that is to kind of combat when you get a grasp of what the Dolphins defense what the Dolphins offense is preparing, when you understand what the tape looks like and how it is that they like their bread and butter plays, essentially.
And what makes it hard to defend, really hard to defend, is they use motion, Buck, more than any team in the NFL by a wide margin. So very often the motion isn't necessarily the receiver who's going to get the ball, although Tyreek Hill, I think at 118 of his targets, and I think he had maybe 170, 180 targets, he was the one in motion. So, but the point of motion as well is motion expands the defense horizontally. And that then creates windows, because if the defense starts to expand horizontally, there's more space inside. So that's where Mike McDaniel, with his such extensive use of motion, far more, let's say, than the Niners, who still are a heavy motion team, but McDaniel has really expanded the deployment of motion, and that really helps to create those windows that really define the throws for Tua. And he has such as I said, such an innate feel and natural understanding of some of those throws. If I would have stopped the tape as he's starting his delivery, Buck, and then you were sitting with me, and I'd say, hey, he's going to throw it to Hill. Hill hasn't even begun his break yet, and it looks like Tua is throwing it right to the underneath defender. I mean, that's what he's really, really good at. But you made a great point, and it's worth exploring. The idea of scheme and quarterback. There's the way a lot of coaches look at quarterbacks as they evaluate them, even coming out of college, is, yes, one, can he play within the scheme effectively? But can he also play outside of structure? Because there's a feeling that that is becoming more and more essential in the league. That's not Tua's game. Tua is a rhythm timing player. He's got incredibly quick feet on his drop. He's got a really compact delivery. His ball placement in the short to intermediate area, and as I said, he throws a great fade ball, is really good, maybe as good as any quarterback in the league throwing those kinds of throws. But he doesn't give you much. And beyond that. And I don't want that to be a negative statement. I'm saying he can't really make outside of structure plays. Now, he'll make a couple. Every quarterback does, but that's not really his game. He's not going to really beat you by making those kinds of plays.
And I think anybody who's watched the Dolphins for any extended period of time understands exactly that he has a certain way that he operates when he's at his best, and then if you were able to take him out of that rhythm and structure, that's when things start to fray. As it did a little bit against the Titans. Now, a part of that was Tyreek Hill on that Monday Night Football game, one of the by point spread, the biggest upset of the NFL season.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was there sitting in the press box. I still
Yeah.
think that happened. I'm pretty sure the rest of the country turned that game off because they thought the Dolphins had it in hand. But when Tyreek Hill missed as much time as he did throughout the course of the game, you saw how they tried to adjust, but there's no real adjusting when you lose that integral.
No, and he's so fast. He changes everything. But I mean, obviously Shane Bowen is not there anymore as the DC. But the Titans had a really good game plan, I thought, because what they did on third down in particular and on selected longer yardage situations out of nickel and dime is a lot of disguise, a lot of late rotation, because you know what you're trying to do? You're trying just to create a moment of doubt in Tagovailoa and slow down his precise timing on those first window throws, because that's his game. He wants to hit that first window. If he doesn't hit the first window, again, I'm not saying he can never make a throw or make a play. I hope people don't take it that way, but that's the way he's comfortable. That's his game. He's a timing rhythm first window thrower, and you're trying to create just a little bit of doubt, because if he sees it cleanly, he's going to make those throws.
It's not just about Tyreek, though. The amount of speed that they have on offense, Greg, and continue to add this offseason.
Yes.
Jalen Wright, for example, the running back out of Tennessee that we've talked about, Raheem Mostert, even at an advanced age for a running back, an incredibly productive player in that scheme. Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle, plus the addition of Odell Beckham Jr. this year. We know how Mike McDaniel generally will deploy these players. We have enough of a sample size of his body of work. Of course, there's changes made every year. What in particular intrigues you about the new pieces that they're adding?
Well, yeah, let me speak just to the speed for a second, if I could, because that's really problematic, because it's really tough to play man coverage against them. And it's really difficult to play single high coverage against them, because single high, the reality is outside the numbers, if you're going to run Hill on a vertical type route outside the numbers, that post safety is not getting there. He's too far away. So it forces teams to play a certain way, and the Dolphins know that. And then you add in the high percentage of motion to the offensive equation. And so what happens, and we've talked about this before, is defenses are kind of forced to shrink their defensive menu, their pressure menu, their coverage menu, and the Dolphins know this. And McDaniel, I've had a chance over the years to talk to him. He's savant-like. I mean, he's a little different cat, but he's so smart, and he knows all this. This is why teams study. This is why they watch film. They know how teams are going to play. There's very few surprises in terms of, oh my God, we never saw that before, and they know how teams will really try to play them. Will there be a wrinkle every once in a while? Of course. But overall, you're not going to see something 12 times in a game where you went, oh my God, where did that come from? That doesn't really happen in the NFL.
On the defensive side of the ball, Vic Fangio departs the team, heads up to Philadelphia to be their new DC, and they get Anthony Weaver, the former Ravens defensive line coach.
Yeah.
In a system that I've got familiarity with, not just because Denard Wilson is here, bringing that Baltimore system over to the Titans defense. But talking to Coach Dave McGinnis about it, it's got its roots from Greg Williams to all the way back to Buddy Ryan, essentially. At least plan for the Dolphins to install a similar type of system there. They do lose Christian Wilkins in the middle of that defense. He goes to the Las Vegas Raiders, and they have brought in several different kinds of players, including Shaq Barrett off the edge, who are going to try and supplement what it is that they lost to the free agent process. But what's the biggest question you have about the Miami Dolphins defense under Anthony Weaver, Greg?
Well, I think I'm most curious about what they're going to look like. Weaver was a D coordinator for 1 year in Houston, and he did a lot of things. I mean, a lot of pressures, a lot of blitzes. I would expect to see a good amount of that. I think that's probably the way he'd like to play. Now, he'll have to decide if he has the personnel. The other question is, what is Jalen Ramsey in this defense now? Because Ramsey with the Rams and even with the Dolphins has, played in the slot a lot, what a lot of teams like to call the star position. But who knows? Maybe he'll now be an outside corner and he'll play more man given his background, because he does have that man-to-man background. Because even though he was in Baltimore this past year under Mike McDonald, who didn't play as much man, Wink Martindale was there prior, and he played a ton of man. And as you said, there's a background with, talking to Coach Mack, that goes back with a lot of man coverage. So he may decide that Jalen Ramsey is a man corner, and we're going to line him up on the outside. We can play man, and it gives us more options with pressures, with more hybrid coverage looks. I wouldn't be surprised to see that defense have a look of pressure. Now, I think a lot depends on if Jalen Phillips can come back and be, what he was, because he was an emerging superstar as a pass rusher. And, he had a bad injury, and we just don't know at this point.
Yeah. It is going to be fascinating. I'm looking forward to talking about this entire division throughout the course of the next couple of weeks. The Jets are interesting for a great many reasons. I know they're a bit of a more of a TMZ storyline this time of year, right?
Apparently, yes. Apparently, with what's been going on the past couple of days as well. I guess for some, football is not as important as others, but we'll see what happens.
Well, certainly that's the discussion being had right now. But Buffalo, the Jets, the Dolphins, and even the Patriots, who are coming down or coming up after some down years in the wake of Tom Brady.
Well, it's a division that the Titans play. So,
yeah,
because they've got Miami week 4 on Monday Night Football. So in Miami, where it's probably not going to be crisp and cool in late September, but that's their first national TV game, and really at this point, kind of their only one. Maybe if they play well this year, they'll get a Sunday nighter down the road. But that's, as we look at the schedule now, it's the only. I think do they have a Thursday night game? They probably do.
Night game this season.
What's that?
They do not have a Thursday night game.
Oh, okay. Then that's their only national televised game right now.
That is correct. Nobody wants to see him, Greg, but that was the case for the Houston Texans last year, and CJ Stroud certainly turned that on its head in his rookie season. So
Yep.
you got to earn a little more spotlight than the Titans are currently working with right now, but that's okay. Buddy, I'll look forward to talking a little Bills with you when we get together next week and taking a tour throughout the course of the NFL in this offseason and summer vacation time, or at least summer vacation for the NFL, but God knows that Greg does not stop grinding.
No. I'm
out of the building.
Jumping back and forth watching college and NFL stuff, so it's been fun.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you again next Wednesday. Thanks for the
All
time.
right, Buck, thanks.